Something unusual is happening in the electric vehicle war, and almost nobody is talking about it. But before we start, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. While Tesla dominates headlines with software updates and Elon Musk's latest statements, and while BYD floods every market with aggressive pricing and massive production numbers, one company made a move so quiet and so calculated that most people completely missed it. Hyundai took a single SUV, launched it in the most brutal EV market on the planet, let it survive there, and then shipped it straight to Australia. No fanfare, no world tour press conference, just results. The car is called the Electio 2026. It looks like a clean, modern SUV from the outside. But underneath that body sits a platform that Hyundai spent years engineering from the ground up, paired with a battery system that the company claims can push anywhere between 500 and 700 kilometers on a single charge. That number alone is enough to make any serious EV buyer stop scrolling. But here's what actually makes this story worth paying attention to. It's not just the range figure, and it's not just the design. It's the strategy. The way Hyundai chose where to launch, why it chose China first, how it built the technology layer by layer, and how it's now positioning itself directly against the two biggest names in electric vehicles. That strategy, if it plays out the way Hyundai is planning, could quietly rewrite the rankings in the global EV market. So what exactly is inside this car? What is the battery doing that makes 700 kilometers possible? How does the platform work, and what does it mean for the buyer? And most importantly, does Hyundai actually have what it takes to go up against Tesla and BYD? Or is this another case of a traditional automaker making big promises and under-delivering? Stay until the end, because by the time this is done, you'll understand not just the car, but the entire game Hyundai is playing. Before you can understand how big a deal the Electio actually is, you need to understand the company standing behind it. Because Hyundai is not a newcomer trying to break into a competitive space. It's already one of the largest automobile companies on Earth, and that changes everything about how seriously you should take this move. Hyundai Motor Company is not just a single brand. It is the parent of the Hyundai Motor Group, which also includes Kia, Genesis, and several other sub-brands. Together, this group sells somewhere in the range of 4 to 4.5 million vehicles every single year across the global market. That includes petrol, diesel, hybrid, and electric. That kind of volume means Hyundai already has the manufacturing infrastructure, the supply chain relationships, the dealer networks, and the logistics capabilities that take decades to build. When Hyundai launches something new, it is not fighting to get shelf space. It already has the shelf. Now, within that broader picture, the EV side of the business is where things get genuinely interesting. Hyundai entered the electric vehicle race later than some of its competitors, but it entered with a very specific plan rather than a scramble. In the years leading up to 2024 and 2025, Hyundai's EV sales climbed rapidly, reaching somewhere between 300,000 and 400,000 electric vehicles sold globally. That number is not Tesla level yet, but it is not a test run either. It is a growing, serious segment that the company has made central to its long-term direction. What signals that commitment most clearly is not a sales figure. It is a platform. Hyundai developed the EGMP, which stands for Electric Global Modular Platform, and the significance of that goes well beyond what the name suggests. This is not what other manufacturers have sometimes done, which is take an existing petrol car architecture, hollow it out, and squeeze a battery pack into the available space. That approach always results in compromises. Odd weight distribution, awkward interior proportions, a driving feel that never quite matches what a purpose-built EV should be. The EGMP was designed from a blank sheet. Hyundai engineers started with the question of what an electric car actually needs, and they built the platform around that answer. The battery sits flat across the floor, which drops the center of gravity significantly and opens up a much roomier cabin. The motor, the power electronics, and the thermal systems are all integrated into an architecture designed specifically for their requirements. It is a completely different starting point than a modified legacy platform, and the cars that come from it behave differently because of it. Total global vehicle sales in 2024 crossed the 4.2 million mark for the group, reinforcing just how wide Hyundai's reach already is. North America, South Korea, India, and Europe are its four strongest pillars. In India alone, Hyundai is the second largest automaker, with models like the Creta and Venue consistently topping sales charts. In Europe, the brand has built a particularly strong reputation in the EV segment specifically. And then there is China, the market that everyone in the automotive world watches most closely, and the one that Hyundai chose as the first proving ground for the Alexio. That was not a coincidence. And the reason behind it is one of the most revealing parts of this entire story. If you wanted to test whether your electric vehicle could actually survive in the real world, where would you send it? The answer, if you are thinking the way Hyundai's strategists were, is China. And that decision tells you more about how serious Hyundai is about the Alexio than any press release ever could. China is not just the largest EV market in the world. It is the most unforgiving one. The government has been pushing electric vehicles aggressively for years, offering subsidies, building out charging infrastructure at a scale that most Western countries have not come close to matching, and mandating that automakers hit increasingly aggressive electrification targets. The result is a population of EV buyers that is genuinely experienced, genuinely demanding, and genuinely difficult to impress. These are not early adopters excited by the novelty of a quiet motor. These are everyday drivers who have already owned one or two EVs, who compare range figures the way other people compare fuel economy, and who will not forgive a product for having a slow charging time or inconsistent real-world performance. On top of that, the local competition in China is unlike anything you face in other markets. BYD has deep roots there and manufactures its own battery cells, giving it a cost and technology advantage that no import can simply match on paper. NIO has built an entire ecosystem around battery swapping. XPeng has pushed hard into the software-defined vehicle space. These are not small regional brands. They are well-funded, fast-moving companies with massive home market advantages. If a foreign automaker can build a car that Chinese buyers actually choose to purchase over those local options, the car has passed one of the toughest competitive exams anywhere in the world. Hyundai understood all of this, and that is precisely why China was the launch market. It functions as a live laboratory, a testing environment so demanding that anything which performs well there can be trusted to perform well almost anywhere else. Thousands of real users in real traffic, across genuinely varied weather conditions, urban charging infrastructure, and long highway runs, produce a kind of feedback that no controlled testing environment can replicate. Software bugs surface. Thermal management issues appear in extreme heat or cold that laboratory simulations might miss. Charging behavior patterns emerge that reveal whether the battery management system is truly optimized or just looks good in spec sheets. And crucially, all of that becomes data. Real-time, high-volume, unfiltered product data that Hyundai's engineers can act on. A weakness found in the Chinese market can be addressed before the car lands in other countries. An unexpected strength, something that Chinese drivers actually love about the car, can be amplified in the marketing for the next market. By the time the Alexio arrived in Australia, it was not a fresh product heading into unknown territory. It was a refined product that had already been through one of the most demanding product evaluations any automaker could put a car through. The Australia launch itself is significant in a different way. Australia's EV adoption has been accelerating quickly, with buyers there showing strong appetite for capable, long-range SUVs and genuine skepticism about vehicles that cannot back up their claimed range in the local driving environment, which includes long distances between charging points, extreme heat in summer, and highways where 500 kilometers of real range can matter enormously. The Alexio, having already been refined through the Chinese market, arrived in that environment as a tested product. And the market response reflected exactly that. But none of what China validated and none of what Australia is now experiencing would be possible without what is happening inside the battery itself. Every electric vehicle is, at its core, a battery with wheels attached. Everything else, the software, the design, the features, the driving dynamics, all of it sits on top of that one fundamental question. How well does the battery actually work? And with the Alexio, Hyundai has made decisions at the battery level that explain both the range claims and the confidence with which the company has taken this car into competitive markets. Start with the chemistry. Like virtually every other modern EV, the Alexio uses lithium-ion battery technology. But that category covers an enormous range of performance depending on how the cells are designed. Hyundai's focus here has been on energy density, meaning how much usable power can be stored within a given physical size and weight. Getting that number higher allows for a longer range without simply making the battery pack larger and heavier, which creates its own set of problems. A heavier pack requires more energy to move, which reduces the efficiency gains from increasing capacity. The engineering challenge is to push energy density up while keeping the pack weight from scaling proportionally, and Hyundai has invested significantly in cell design improvements to address exactly that. But energy density is only one side of the equation. The other side is how efficiently that stored energy gets used. Hyundai has spent considerable effort on the power management layer, which governs how energy flows between the battery, the electric motor, and all the other systems in the car. The goal is to minimize waste at every transfer point. When the motor requests power, how much of what the battery releases actually reaches the wheels rather than getting lost as heat? When the car brakes and regenerates energy, how efficiently is that captured and stored? When the climate system runs, is it drawing intelligently based on what the battery can afford at that moment? The Electrio's motor, battery, and control software have been tuned together as a single integrated system rather than as separately optimized components that happen to share the same vehicle. That integration is what makes the claimed 500 to 700 kilometer range a realistic expectation rather than a best-case scenario laboratory number. Then there is thermal management, which is where many EVs quietly fail in real-world conditions even if they perform acceptably in testing. Lithium-ion batteries have a fairly narrow temperature window in which they perform optimally. Too cold and the chemistry slows, reducing both available power and the battery's willingness to accept a fast charge. Too hot and the cells degrade faster, with safety risks emerging at the extreme end. Most drivers never encounter the extreme end, but they do regularly experience the performance degradation that comes from batteries running warmer than ideal on a long highway drive or during a high-power fast charging session. Hyundai has addressed this with a liquid cooling system that actively manages cell temperatures across the entire pack rather than just monitoring them. Liquid cooling is more effective and more controllable than air cooling, allowing the system to maintain cell temperatures within a tighter range regardless of what the car is doing. The practical results of this are meaningful. Consistent range across different weather conditions, rather than significant drops in summer heat or winter cold. Faster and more reliable high-speed charging because the cells are being actively cooled during the process rather than absorbing heat unchecked. And lower long-term degradation, meaning the battery pack should retain more of its original capacity after several years of use compared to less actively managed systems. That charging speed is also where the platform itself enters the story, because the Electrio's fast charging capability is not just a function of the battery. It comes from the 800-volt electrical architecture that the EGMP platform supports, which changes the physics of charging in a fundamental way. The battery gets the headlines, but the platform is where the real engineering story lives. The EGMP, Hyundai's electric global modular platform, is the foundation beneath the Electrio, and understanding what it does and why it matters is what separates a surface-level look at this car from a genuine understanding of why Hyundai is positioned the way it is. The first thing to grasp about the EGMP is what it is not. It is not an adaptation of a platform that was originally designed for petrol vehicles. That approach, which multiple manufacturers have used because it is cheaper and faster than developing something entirely new, always produces compromises. The engine bay space is no longer needed, but the structural logic of the vehicle was built around it. The floor sits higher than it needs to because the original architecture never anticipated a flat battery pack running underneath. The driving feel never quite achieves what a ground-up EV design is capable of, because the weight distribution and structural geometry are inherited from a different type of vehicle entirely. Hyundai started with a blank page. The EGMP was engineered from the beginning for electric vehicles, with the battery as the central structural element rather than an afterthought. The pack sits flat across the floor of the car, which does two things simultaneously. First, it places the heaviest component at the lowest possible point in the vehicle, dropping the center of gravity significantly compared to either a petrol car or an EV with a compromised battery placement. The handling benefit of a low center of gravity is real and immediately noticeable. The car feels planted through corners, body roll is reduced, and at high speeds the vehicle tracks with a stability that petrol SUVs of similar size rarely achieve. Second, The flat floor opens up the cabin in ways that feel genuinely different to passengers. Without a transmission tunnel running down the center and without the bulky components that surround a combustion engine, the interior space can be distributed more generously and more thoughtfully. The modular aspect of the platform is what makes it commercially powerful. Because the EGMP is designed with flexibility built in, Hyundai can construct SUVs, sedans, crossovers, and other body styles on the same basic structure without rebuilding the engineering from scratch for each one. The battery module sizes, the motor configurations, and the suspension geometries can all be adjusted within the platform's parameters to suit different vehicles. This is a significant operational advantage. Development costs for each new model are substantially lower. Time from concept to production is faster, and the quality improvements Hyundai makes to the platform benefit every vehicle built on it, not just one specific model. For the buyer, the clearest expression of what the EGMP enables is the 800-volt charging architecture. Most EVs on the market operate on 400-volt electrical systems. The physics of charging means that higher voltage allows for faster energy transfer without the current levels that would generate excessive heat and require prohibitively expensive wiring. At 800 volts, the Electio can accept power from compatible fast chargers at rates that deliver a meaningful charge in a fraction of the time that slower architectures require. The practical result is that in 15 to 20 minutes at a high-power station, the car can recover enough range to continue a long journey without what has become known as range anxiety genuinely disrupting the experience. Hyundai also built the EGMP with the future in mind in a way that matters beyond marketing language. The platform supports battery upgrades, meaning as cell technology improves over the coming years, future vehicles on the same base can integrate better packs without a complete architectural redesign. Software updates can be pushed to the vehicle, improving performance and adding features over time. The architecture was written to remain relevant as the industry continues to move. The choice to put all of this into an SUV body is deliberate in a way that goes beyond simply following a trend. Now comes the part where the real stakes become clear. Launching a capable EV with strong range figures means nothing in isolation. The question is how it performs when it sits on the same comparison page as a Tesla Model Y or a BYD Atto 3. And that question reveals everything about whether Hyundai's quiet strategy is actually working. Start with Tesla. Tesla's real strength is not a car. It is an ecosystem. The supercharger network, the over-the-air updates that improve the vehicle months after purchase, the autopilot system, the brand identity that makes ownership feel like a statement. These are not specs on a comparison chart. They are lock-in points Tesla spent over a decade building, and they work. When someone buys a Model Y, the car itself is almost secondary to the world surrounding it. Hyundai is not trying to replicate that world. It is offering something different on purpose. Where Tesla sells a vision of the future, Hyundai sells a refined version of the present. The focus is not on what a software update might unlock 6 months from now. It is on how the car performs on day 1 and day 500. How reliable is it across temperatures and use patterns? How does the battery hold up after years of fast charging? How does the ownership experience feel when the novelty is completely gone? These are questions Hyundai has been answering for decades in petrol and hybrid markets, and it is carrying that same identity directly into EVs. For the buyer who wants long-range practicality, a spacious cabin, and a brand they have already trusted for years, the Electio lands differently than a Tesla. Not because Tesla is worse, but because the priorities are different. The tech enthusiast who wants to feel like they are driving the future chooses Tesla. The family weighing real-world range against total ownership cost looks at the Electio and finds something much harder to walk away from. Hyundai has aimed squarely at that second group, and that group is enormous. Now turn to BYD, which is a completely different kind of threat. BYD manufactures its own battery cells, controls its own supply chain at a depth most automakers cannot match, and operates at a production scale that compresses costs in ways external battery buyers simply cannot replicate. When BYD wants to cut the price of a model, it can pull directly on the cost of the cells themselves. That is a structural advantage that looks almost impossible to fight head-on. So Hyundai does not fight it head-on. Instead, it competes on the complete package. Driving refinement, interior quality, long-term component durability, and a software experience that feels considered rather than functional. Buyers who have spent serious time with both products consistently describe the Hyundai as more polished in the details that only reveal themselves after months of daily use. BYD wins on cost architecture. Hyundai answers with finish and feel. The economics behind Hyundai's pricing come from three compounding factors that work quietly in the background. Group-wide manufacturing scale spreads fixed costs across millions of vehicles per year. Decades of supplier relationships keep raw material pricing stable in ways a newer global entrant has not yet earned. And the EGMP platform, by supporting multiple vehicle types on a single foundation, spreads development costs across the entire lineup rather than loading them onto one model. Invest in the platform once, benefit across every car built on it. None of this makes headlines. It does not generate viral moments or dominate automotive coverage for a week. It accumulates the way durable competitive positions always do, through preparation that happened long before anyone was paying attention. Hyundai did not rush into the EV market when the noise was loudest. It built the foundation, tested the product in the world's most punishing market, refined it on real-world data, and then brought it forward at the exact moment mainstream buyers are finally ready to switch in serious numbers. Tesla showed the world what electric vehicles could aspire to be. BYD showed the world how many people could actually afford one. Hyundai is now showing the world what happens when engineering discipline, global scale, and years of quiet preparation all arrive at the same time. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the most dangerous competitor. And right now, the one that Tesla and BYD should be watching most carefully is the one that has barely raised its voice at all.